We're going to call tonight's meeting to order.
Yeah.
After the call. All right, go ahead. Commissioner Jordan, will you give tonight's invocation, please?
I will. Everyone bow their heads. Most gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to gather here. Thank you for allowing us to this evening. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to make these, putting us in this position and make these decisions on behalf of the City of Hernando. Thank you for the wonderful community in which we live. Please be with us and guide us as we make decisions tonight, and guide us in the best direction as you would have us see fit. Amen.
Amen.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Ashworth,
Here.
Commissioner Thorne,
Here.
Commissioner Clark,
Here.
Commissioner Carter,
Here.
Commissioner Jordan,
Here.
Commissioner Hawkins,
Here.
Commissioner Skeen,
Here.
Commissioner Brumbelow.
Before I ask for approval of minutes, I just want to tell everybody a Happy New Year. We're already halfway, it seems, through the month, so the first month of the year. So anyway, has everyone had a chance to look over the last month's meetings? If so, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Thorne,
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan,
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth,
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen.
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, we got a couple of hearings tonight. They're just a little FYI on this. There's no action to take. We're just going to hear these from Mr. Page. And Mr. Page, the first action would be asphalt overlay project on McInville Road from I-269 north to Pleasant Hill Road.
Okay. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
I'm gonna get it sooner or later. It's like they're hooked together. I'm gonna give you the one on the bottom.
It needs to be over. Thank you, sir. I've tried that thing a lot. It's in bad shape.
Just under today.
What this has to do with the Memphis Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is the transportation planning organization for the metropolitan area, which includes, of course, Memphis and Shelby County, as well as Fayette and the one north of Shelby County. I can't think of what that is. But also DeSoto County here in Mississippi. And through the MPO, there are transportation grant funds that are available to be applied for. And it's a pretty good deal. It's a 80-20 grant, so 80% of the cost is federal dollars, with only 20% of the cost being local dollars. So, obviously, any kind of improvement that we can get approved, will be at a substantial benefit, to the city by reducing cost dollars involved. Now, as Mr. Carter mentioned in his opening, essentially this first project has to do with McInville Road north of I-269. Essentially, it's my understanding that there's an area up in there where they're looking at building a new school. And the road in that area, I understand, is pretty bad. And so the purpose of this grant application is seeking funds to resurface McInville Road. So it's not really intended to construct a new road or widen the road or anything like that. It's strictly a resurfacing project of the existing road. As since this involves federal dollars, we have to have a public hearing, basically to allow members of the public to comment if they so wish, on the application. And as Chairman Carter mentioned, there's really no action required by the Planning Commission. It is simply an opportunity for the public to comment. So with that, I will go sit down.
Is there anyone from the audience that would like to comment in regard to this public hearing? All right, so I'm going to close that first hearing. We're going to open the second one with Nesbit Road Sidewalk Improvement Project. And if you'll give the staff report on that, Mr. Page, before you sit down.
Yeah, I didn't quite make it today. Gentlemen, just in case anybody hadn't realized it, you are also members of the public. So if you have any questions or comments, that is okay. All right. Now, this is a sidewalk project, and it's in Nesbit. Basically, in that area between Winningham Estates and what we might characterize loosely as downtown Nesbit. We have sidewalks in front, across the entire frontage of Winningham Estates. And the idea of this project is to build sidewalks from Winningham down to, downtown Nesbit, and basically make the square around that concentration of commercial buildings that constitutes downtown Nesbit, that's formed by Nesbit Road, Gwynn Road, and Dean Road. And then, of course, take the sidewalk back on the south side of Nesbit Road back out to the same distance, roughly where Winningham Estates is located. The project, besides installing sidewalks, as you will note on your visual aids there, there's the intention of some landscaping. There's also the intention of enhanced street lights, in that area, as well as some improved signage in that area. So, although the primary focus is the sidewalks, there's also a safety element involved, by getting pedestrians and off the roadway. And also, as I said, making it a safer environment with enhanced street lighting and signage. So that's the project, unless anyone has any questions.
On page 3,
Yes.
isn't that the area where we granted a variance?
We granted a variance for,
For no sidewalk across that ditch?
yeah, it's just, the variance that we granted, and this photograph really doesn't show it very well, but there's basically kind of a ravine, that runs right through here. And we just granted a variance for that portion where the ravine is located. They have, this, as I said, this aerial photograph, of course, is an older photograph. It doesn't show the new construction that's gone on there. But there is an existing sidewalk, that runs across the front of that property.
So will the,
The grant will take care of bridging that ravine.
To connect to the sidewalk that's
Yeah.
already there.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's true on the north side of the road as well, that there is, because this ravine basically runs underneath the highway, and onto the other side, so.
Is this also federal dollars?
Yes. Yeah, as I said, it's a 80-20 grant program.
So both of these are 80/20?
Yeah, so it's, now, of course, this is a competitive grant, so there's not necessarily a guarantee that we will get the grant. But, you know,
That's interesting, so,
can't get it if you don't try, you know, so.
but are these still needing to go forward regardless if we get the grant or not?
And that's gonna be up to the mayor and board, you
Okay.
know, because that gets back to budgeting and how much money they have to
Well, simple
put
math,
towards
80/20
project.
is $500,000.
Everybody goes after these funds. It's just what you do as a government. I mean, because it's 80/20, and there'll be tons of applications. Some will get awarded and some won't, and the MPO process. BJ and I used to sit next to each other at the MPO meetings and listen to the proceedings, and it's just basically, you know, you put together your best projects, the money that you want to try to get for your city, and you're competing against the entire MPO, which is greater Memphis area. But Mississippi and Tennessee are separate in the pool. But yeah, we got to go after these things for sure.
You know, and they are, you know,
Metropolitan Planning Organization.
yes.
We have a grant for the Nesbit Square project right
Right.
now, but this is adding to the funds. Is
Yeah,
that correct,
essentially,
BJ?
we got what's called a TA grant, you know, which just comes through MDOT, and is basically, you know, kind of a landscaping type grant. And unfortunately, those TA funds, there are not a lot of them, you know. And so this application, you know, it comes from basically what you might call a different pot of funds. And so if we get it, you know, it will complement and expand that original project.
I guess we didn't have any idea that there was intended to be a sidewalk put right there when we granted that variance. I mean, that just troubles me that we kind of let the private landowner off the hook, and the government's gonna have to pay for it.
Well, you know, I'll tell you, you know, and this is kind of based on your individual view, you know, perspective. The problem I saw with that issue was that the property line between the folks that were asking for the variance and the property on the other side of the ravine, property line basically ran down the middle of the ravine. You know, so how, you know, we could have told the guy, no, you can't have a variance, but what is he gonna do? Is he gonna build a sidewalk halfway across the ravine and then stop? You know, it was really a complicated issue, you know. So, you know, I don't have a, you know, it almost became, you know, and considering that the next property down was that reception hall that's out there, you know, there really wasn't, you know, we were able to get the sidewalk from the people that were asking for the variance because it was new construction and they had to build the sidewalk. Whereas the folks in the reception hall, you know, it was an existing building, you know, existing land use that was already up and operating. You know, there was really no way for us to get the sidewalk from their side, you know, to coordinate with, you know, the other folks. You know, in a sense, it was one of those deals that in the end probably became a project that was going to have to be undertaken by the city just to make it work. But that's just my viewpoint. If there are no other questions, I will actually sit down.
I'll let you this time. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to comment on this hearing, including commission? There's no other comments. We're just going to close these two hearings, Mr. Page, and move on to other business. The request for a design review variance to waive the requirement for providing grass or other ground cover around the site, allowing the site to remain as dirt and crushed concrete is identified on the submitted site plan for Delta Industries. The applicant has withdrawn that application, so we will not be hearing that one tonight. And then in the newer business, the request to rezone a 10.7 acre tract of land located on the south side of Green Tea Road, east of US Highway 51, and west of Interstate 55 in Section 1, Township 3 South, Range 8 West, from the R12 Single Family Residential to C2 Highway Commercial. The applicant, or we have to table that meeting, am I correct on that? Because public hearing sign was not erected. So I will need a motion on this item to table until the February 8th, 2022, 6 p.m. meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I might note, actually, items 1 and 2 under new business are the same property, the same applicant. Although we could have gone forward with the preliminary plat approval involved in number 2, they really want their applications to move together. So they're really looking to table both of those applications, and I think it would be all right, if you wanted to make a motion to table both of them, since it's the same property and the same applicant.
The applications, PL 1580 and PL 1581, we can make the motion for both of them to table it until the February 8th, 2022, 6 p.m. meeting. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to table.
Second?
Second.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Thorne,
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan,
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins, Commissioner Ashworth,
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen.
Aye.
Motion passes to table until the February 8th meeting. All right, Mr. Page, next item is a request for preliminary plat approval for the Oak Grove minor lot subdivision, 7 lots, 20.03 acre, located at the north side of West Oak Grove Road, west of Scott Road, and east of Oak Crossing Drive in Section 15, Township 3 South, Range 8 West.
Okay. Basically, this is a preliminary plat approval. I did want to mention that, just so that everyone's not misled by the name of the subdivision, in our subdivision regulations, a minor subdivision is a subdivision of 4 lots or less. A major subdivision is, basically 5 lots or more. Since this has 7 lots in little minor lots on it, okay? And as I mentioned, it's 7-lot residential subdivision. The property is zoned A agricultural. The subject property is basically 20.03 acres out of a larger 206-acre tract. Approximately 145.5 acres in the northern half of the property was rezoned from A Agricultural District to the PUD Planned Unit Development District by the Board of Aldermen on June 16, 2020, known as Weatherby West. The proposed Oak Grove minor lot subdivision, as previously noted, will consist of 20.03 acres, while there are remaining 40.07 acres that remain vacant and are not covered by either preliminary approval. The proposed Oak Grove minor lot subdivision, basically, the minimum lot size in the A Agricultural District is 1.5 acres, and as you can see, lots 1 through 4 will each consist of 1.97 acres, while Lot 5 will consist of 2.84 acres, and Lot 6, 2.46 acres, and Lot 7, 6.85 acres. So basically, all of the proposed lots exceed that minimum lot size requirement. All the lots will have access to public water, but one of the notes I just wanted to bring to your attention on the plat suggests that sanitary sewer treatment will be addressed through on-site treatment systems, even though the city's sewer services are available in nearby Weatherby Place subdivision. I've given you the setback provisions for the agricultural district. I would note, the minimum lot width of 100 feet, all the lots, exceed that requirement. As proposed, it appears that the minor lot subdivision exceeds all of the development requirements of the agricultural district. At this point in time, we've not received a copy of the proposed restrictive covenants for this subdivision, so I can't really bring to you any information on the proposed minimum house size or any architectural standards proposed at this time. We have also not yet received any proposals for the location and construction of the cluster mailboxes that will be required for this development, conforming to the city's recent amendment on this subject. However, because it's only been recently adopted, this shouldn't be unanticipated, that we're going to have some hiccups like this, at least initially. I did want to note that this is an application for preliminary plat approval. Preliminary plat should require how the entire property is proposed to be developed. In this case, even if you discount the Weatherby West PUD previously approved by the Board of Aldermen, as well as the 20.03 acres involved in this proposal, there is still 40.07 acres in the overall property that is not covered by either preliminary plat. Some of this 40.07 acres lies to the west of this proposed subdivision, as well as some of it to the east of the proposed subdivision. And again, I would note that the title is not entirely correct, because this is not minor subdivision, it's a major subdivision. I have given you a proposed motion if you should elect to grant approval. Essentially, some of the things that need to be addressed on the plat, the vicinity map on both pages 1 and 2 of the plat need to be revised to correctly identify Scott Road. As you may note from the plat that's in your staff report, the vicinity map shows both the correct Oak Grove Road as Oak Grove Road, but it also labels Scott Road as also being Oak Grove Road. So, we need to fix that. We need to correct note number 5 on pages 1 and 2 to state that there is a 10-foot wide utility easement on the rear property line of all the lots, and revise the plat drawing to identify the utility easements on all the lots. As I think I've noted to the commission in the past, we keep having this confusion over the fact that the county has a requirement that allows only 10 feet utility easement on the front of the property, but 5 feet on the sides and the back, whereas the city's requirement is 10 feet on both the front and the back, only 5 foot on the sides. And, we still seem to be having confusion over that point. On page 1, we need to include the distance and bearings for the out-boundary line of lots 1 through 5 on the plat. This is the north property line of those lots. The distance and bearings are on the second page, but not on the first page. So if you are looking for information relating to one of the 5 lots on the front of the property, you don't have the information for that page of the plat. We need to complete the notes on page 2 of the plat. There are several blanks that haven't been filled in. We need to complete the survey data on both pages 1 and 2, which also have a bunch of blanks. We need to revise note number 3 on both pages 1 and 2 to read that sewer service will be provided by the city of Hernando and remove the reference to on-site. Correct the zoning district designation in the title block on all 3 pages of the plat to read the A district rather than the AR district. We need to correct the dates on all of the certifications on page 3 of the plat to read 2022, not 2021. We need to revise the plat to label the section corner tie-in. It's shown on the plat, but it's not labeled. It doesn't tell you, what it's tying into. Then again, we need to revise the owners and the mortgagees' certificates to state that the right-of-ways for the roads and the utility easements are being dedicated specifically to the city of Hernando, Mississippi. People are still using that incorrect verbiage for the dedication statements. Revise the plat to reflect the location of the cluster mailbox site proposed to serve the development, along with a proposal for construction conforming to the amendment to the city's subdivision regulations recently adopted by the Board of Aldermen. As you may recall from our review of that proposed amendment, the intent was that this information on cluster mailboxes be submitted at the same time as the preliminary plat. And then finally, to revise the plat to identify the front yard setback line on all of the lots. In terms of the restricted covenants, I've included a condition that the covenants be submitted to the Planning Commission for review and approval prior to the submission of any final plat for this property. And I would like to note that the covenants shall include minimum finished heated floor area requirements and architectural provisions for this development, requirements concerning the maintenance of the ingress-egress easement, as well as how that maintenance will be determined and the cost divided between the owners of lots 6 and 7, requirements concerning the maintenance of the cluster mailbox site, how that cost will be shared between the property owners, and then finally, a provision that no amendments may be made to the restricted covenants and recorded unless such amendments have previously been approved by the City of Hernando Planning Commission. And then a provision that none of the lots may be further subdivided in the future. Address signage approved by the Planning Commission shall be installed at the entrance to the ingress-egress easement, identifying the property addresses for lots 6 and 7 prior to issuance of any building permit for either of those lots. Basically, although, our ordinance allows for ingress-egress easements as a way of accessing lots that don't necessarily have street frontage, the only real issue with that is, how does emergency vehicles know what's back there? Because in a lot of circumstances, they're off the road, they can't be seen. So we really need to have some address signage located at the road, where the access easement comes out on the road, identifying the addresses that are accessed by that easement. Let's see. Also, a condition that no further lots will be added to the proposed ingress-egress easement unless that access is first improved to meet all the standards and specifications of a public street. And then from that point on, it is our standard subdivision conditions. Now, one of the things that I did want to draw your attention to relative to the standard subdivision conditions. Our ordinance, our subdivision regulations, do not make any distinction between agricultural subdivisions and all other subdivisions, okay? So the requirement to install, water and sewer service, the requirement to improve the major road street frontage, all come into play. And I discussed this, with the mayor, and basically, his feeling was that if the applicant doesn't want to do those things, he's got to request that of the board, because the board is the one that would have to waive those requirements. So you will note that item number 7 is our standard subdivision condition, requiring the installation of water and sewer, the improvement of half the right-of-way of Oak Grove Road to the extent the road borders the development, submission of performance guarantees, and so forth. But as I said, the rest of those conditions are our standard subdivision conditions. So that's my report, unless anyone has any questions.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Page?
Yeah, Mr. Page, help me understand, because I know, I'm familiar with the PUD rezoning back in 2020. So our ordinance, when we put residential lots on agricultural, it has a different set of requirements that would be an R20 or an R15 or a PUD.
Right.
So why are we, I guess my question is, why are we allowing residential lots to be built on an agricultural zone piece of property?
Well, because the ordinance allows single-family residences in the A agricultural district. It establishes, setbacks and minimum lot sizes for those single-family residences. As I mentioned, in the A agricultural district, it's 1.5 acres per lot.
But the requirements like sewer and different things you pointed out are less restrictive than it would be. Is that just?
No.
Like sewer and stuff like that?
Not less restrictive, no. It's the same requirement for everybody. Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like if you were to go into the county, okay, where sewer is not available, it would not be uncommon to find on-site treatment. Where you have, I hesitate to use the word septic systems because that's not really correct. It's now considered to be on-site treatment systems, okay? In the city, our ordinance does not make a provision for that. Our ordinance requires that you provide sanitary sewer service, through the city.
Regardless if it's
Yeah.
agricultural or not?
Right.
Okay.
Actually, the real question is the availability, And as the mayor rightly pointed out, under our subdivision regulations, it is the authority of the board to, require or waive requirements, as part of their approval of a subdivision, okay? Now, we have gotten into that primarily more through requests to, say, not do road improvements or not do a sidewalk or not do, something like that. This is really the first time that the question of, providing sanitary sewer service has come up. But, as I said, our ordinance requires that they provide that. And it will then be up to the board to decide, whether to, stick with that requirement or not. I hope I kind of answered your question.
You did.
Okay.
Is the requirement that the preliminary plat reflect how the entire property to be developed, is that is that just a general rule of thumb, or is that a requirement that we're supposed to abide by? Because it seems like there's a lot that's missing on this.
Well, it is a requirement. The difficulty we have here is that, they approved that PUD, on the north half of the property without, making them show how the rest of the property was going to be developed, or how the PUD was going to tie into the rest of the property, or how the rest of the property and the PUD were going to tie into like Weatherby Place that's on one side, and then I think it's Oak Crossing or,
Oak Grove Manor.
yeah, that's on the other side, both of which have stub streets, that come into this property, okay?
But one of the challenges too is Oak Grove Manor is county, it's not even city,
Sure.
so.
Well, now we're faced with that problem, so wouldn't it make more sense to enforce that requirement? That they illustrate how they're gonna develop this entire property? If that's the requirement, let's abide by the requirement.
Well, and I think that's certainly a question you would want to pose to the applicant.
Well, the other concern I have too is the two bigger lots in the back. It's just, if I understand, it's just an easement to get back there
Yes,
instead of a road.
right.
So some future landowner that purchases one of those lots back there, is that just a driveway then? They drive on the easement to get to their property?
Yeah, it can be just a driveway. It's kind of one of those deals where, the easement grants both lots, the authority to drive over that area to access the road, and it's not uncommon, in the county and the city, to see access easements used as a way to, move in. The big question with access easements in my mind is that, there has to be, in a sense, a strict control over how much development can be allowed to occur on an access easement. That's why I included the condition of approval that no further subdivision of the lots on those access easements unless it's improved to the level of a city street.
Couldn't we require that now?
Well, that's why I got the condition in there, because it's kind of a situation where, somebody comes along, for example, and, because these lots are so large, they might be able to, potentially rezone the property, to a smaller lot size. And all of a sudden, instead of 2 lots on an access easement, you might have 4 or 6 or 8, and you're really reaching a point, where it's not really correct, to be just having a driveway. Plus it only compounds the issue that I mentioned before about making sure that emergency services, know how many lots are back there and how many residences are back there and what residences, so that if they get a call, because see, those residences, because they're on that access easement, they'll have West Oak Grove Road addresses, but they may not even be visible from Oak Grove Road. So unless there's something, at the road, to identify.
Well, I can't recall at the moment, I'd have to go back and look at that PUD layout, but I think there's a cutout, a bump out road that comes south right into that east edge. And I'm wondering, it's the same developer, so I'm wondering if their plan is to run a road from Oak Grove all the way up into that PUD, along that edge right there.
Well, that's something, again, that you probably need to pose to the applicant. You know, because obviously, I think part of the issue that the developer is looking at, you know, is that the whole western boundary of the subdivision that we're looking at tonight is a creek.
Oh, it's in the flood zone. It's a
Yeah,
mess, it's a
yeah.
mess over
Well, the question is, you know, is part of the reason why the property's being developed the way it is so that they don't have to build a road across that creek.
there. Isn't that our job to kind of eyeball that kind of stuff and slow it down?
That's what I'm saying, you need to ask that question of the applicant.
BJ, what is the, I'm a little confused about the easement. If it's a major subdivision, what in the regulations trips? I mean, is it a certain number of lots that can be served by an easement and a maximum easement width? Or what makes us say, no, you gotta build a city street, we're not gonna let you use an easement
Well,
in the regulations?
I don't know that there's anything in the regulations that specifically says, well, you can only have X number of houses on an access easement. You know, I think that that's almost something that you have to address as they come up. You know, and I'll be frank with you, you know, you've heard my opinion, you know. It's up to you to decide, you know, how you want to look at it.
What about in Olive Branch? You remember was there a specific, like I know in South Haven, maybe you can only have so many lots served off of an easement or some, I've seen it in some municipality, I can't remember where, but was there one what about Olive Branch? How did you guys?
In Olive Branch, you know, it was, you know, almost kind of the minor, major, you know, issue. They would not allow more than 4 lots on an access easement.
Okay. I think maybe that's what the county does, maybe.
I'm not sure if the county even has a standard, to tell you the truth. And to tell you the truth, you know, I don't know that there's any standard in the city ordinance, for example, that would necessarily specify how wide an access easement has to be. You know, that did not come up as a point of discussion because they're proposing a 50-foot wide easement, you know, which would be the equivalent of a 50-foot right-of-way for a minor street. So that did not come up as part of my discussion. You know,
What's the material of an easement? That's not pavement though, is it?
Well, essentially,
be a
the
gravel road.
ordinance, you know, the ordinance requires that all, you know, driveways, you know, and access points and so forth be paved. So, you know, my opinion, you know, and of course, I'm not the planning director, Ms. Cobb's is the planning director, and I'm sure that the mayor would have something to say about it. My position has always been, if the ordinance requires a driveway to be paved, it doesn't matter whether the driveway is, you know, 50 feet long or 150 feet long. The ordinance says the driveway's got to be paved, the driveway's got to be paved. You know, so my only concern, you know, getting back to the issue of density, you know, is how many lots are going to be on that driveway and at what point should it become a public street and be
Well,
constructed
if you
to a
got-
public street standard.
My view is you've got 2 big lots behind these 5. So those 2 lots in of themselves need access to them. And like you were saying, city services, emergency, whatnot, I think it should be a city street to go back there. I'm thinking, you know, but if we don't have anything in the ordinance that requires that, that's just my thought, really, my opinion.
It
Well-
seems like doing it as an easement just gets you out of having to do a sidewalk or a curb and gutter.
Right,
Well-
yeah,
I mean, that seems like it's a
the only
shortcut.
reason, yeah, yeah. It is definitely a cost.
Well,
That's the
sure.
reason you do it, for
Is there,
sure.
there's no way, I mean, they could always go back, depending on what the restrictive covenants say, this would govern what they can do with that 2-acre lot and that 6-acre lot that are in the very back. So without seeing the restrictive covenants, I mean, they could always come back to us in 6 months and ask to split up that 6-acre lot into 3 more lots, correct?
Right.
I mean, so we're,
Yeah. No, as I recall, that PUD and that property on the south here where this wedge is at, all of that property was purchased at the same time, but they only did the rezoning of the PUD at that time. So I'm curious why the lower half of this was not requested as a rezone as well, or just leave it agricultural. And does it go back to your point, Mr. Skeen, that I can do more with less if I leave it agricultural and it would be to rezone it? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, I haven't looked closely at this PUD, so,
I can tell you all about it.
yeah. I'm not that familiar with it.
something else that came to mind whenever I was looking at it, and are you the applicant? I mean, because I didn't know if we were gonna hear from anyone. I mean, we've got this cluster mailbox ordinance now, and that's gotta be on a common area. There's no common area on here. So, I mean, there's no, the preliminary plat appears to be very deficient at this point.
You know, and it's certainly your authority as the planning commission, you know. Basically, just so I could be plain, you know, when I review a subdivision plat, you know, I may not like the subdivision plat, you know, and I may be, you know, opposed to the subdivision plat, but I'm always gonna give you a motion that will allow you to approve it if you want to, okay? And I will try to cover the things I'm concerned about in the conditions, okay? But it's entirely up to you what direction you want to go. If you feel like that there's too much that needs to be addressed on this plat, you know, it's entirely within your authority to table the plat, you know, and tell the guy to fix it before he comes back.
I understand that. I guess and I don't know, Mr. Jordan, how you're feeling about what you were just saying. I don't know that I know enough to know what to ask for to bring it back. I mean, you know what I mean?
I don't disagree with that, Kevin.
I have to study the ordinance a little farther. I mean, I'm surely, you know, if they meet or exceed all the requirements of the ordinance, that's one thing.
Well, I
And then
think
the-
Mr. Page laid that out, and if we proposed it, all those corrections and additions to that stuff, that we're needing to look at too, so, you know, we addressed the cluster mailboxes and the easements. And
Yeah.
I think he's laid that out in the motion to approve it, should we do that, to make sure we abide by all that stuff. But if we do table it, I think they pretty much got a structure here that they go back to realign with, so
So if we,
it is presented
Okay.
correctly to us, if that makes any sense.
yeah, because I'm going to repeat what you just said so I don't understand it. So if we motion to approve based on that list, then it gets approved as long as they check those boxes.
Because that's what those
But if we-
conditions are.
But if we motion to table it, then,
If I may.
yes, sir.
Okay. Let's say you table it, okay, and they go and they make all those changes, okay? It may not result in addressing your concerns about the easement, for example. Or there may be things on that list that they just don't want to do and they want to come in here and argue about it, okay? Wouldn't be the first time that somebody's argued with what I've had to say. So I guess what I'm trying to say is even if you table it and even if they correct it, that does not preclude you from continuing to make changes. About the only thing that you have to get a handle on, or get your mind around, so to speak, is that, you know, subdivisions are a different animal from rezonings, okay? Rezonings are subjective decisions. In other words, you're making a value judgment as to whether or not a piece of property, you know, should be changed from what it is to what they want it, you know, should be changed from what it is to what they want it to be. You know, that's a value judgment. Subdivision approval is an objective decision. You know, what the law says is that, you know, if it meets the ordinance requirements, you pretty much have to approve it. Now, that does not preclude you from, you know, requiring changes in the design or the approach or things of that nature. But it's very difficult to outright deny a subdivision. You know, because basically, just about anything can be fixed with a condition, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is, you know, I want to be sure everybody's clear. Yes, you can table it. Yes, they could change all these things, but that doesn't preclude you from requiring further changes, you know, or taking a different position necessarily than, say, what I have.
I'm all for the subdivision, I'm not about denying the subdivision, we should do it right.
Sure.
And we don't want to impact the city with future problems trying to maintain
Yeah,
that.
I just want to be sure everybody understands that if you table it and they make the changes, you know, that doesn't necessarily put you in a box.
I think at that point too, if we did table it, the only unclarity would be hearing from the applicant on some of the stuff that isn't addressed in here. You know, just in general knowledge from their point of view, that may strengthen a condition that we want to add, or, you know, that's the only reason I would see, my opinion, because Mr. Page has done a great job covering those voids that, you know, in some amendments with, I'm using the cluster mailbox as that example, but I think it's just our general knowledge and consent with knowing what the applicant's gonna do,
I agree.
that you would table it. Otherwise, I think we're pretty structured in that. There may be some more stringent that comes out of hearing from the applicant, but
Well, like Mr. BJ said, that if they meet the requirements of the ordinance by law,
we're,
yeah, they're golden for that word. It's just whether or not we have some other design, you know, things that we want to do.
Well, at this point, they haven't met the requirements.
Well, right.
of the ordinance. But also, I mean, I go back to, I mean, he's not, I don't want to put lipstick on a pig if we've got a problem because the whole property wasn't reviewed at one time, then shouldn't we be requiring this, the rest of the property to be a part of this?
Well, and let me say this, you know, even if you table it, you know, that doesn't preclude you from giving the applicant direction. You know, if you feel like that the preliminary plat should incorporate all of the remaining property, you know, that's outside the PUD, you know, because obviously the PUD has been approved and is fixed. If you think it should include the rest of the property as well as just this 20 acres, you know, then you need to give them that direction.
Yeah, I'm just curious how that connects because, as Mr. Carter will remember, that PUD was a contentious debate over a period of about a year or so. And it's been a year and a half since it got approved, and all of a sudden, there's been no activity on that, and all of a sudden, we've got some activity south of that. I'm curious what's going on there.
Sure.
Yeah, without someone here to ask questions, we're kind of just wasting our time. We should at least have somebody to talk to.
I make a motion to table, or is it time, can I make a motion yet? You open it?
is there any other questions or comments for Mr. Page? Is there anyone here for or against this application? And at this time, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to table the application for preliminary plat approval for the Oak Grove minor lots subdivision
Do we have to have a date?
until our next scheduled meeting.
February 8th meeting? The motion was second. Did everybody hear the motion? Table until February 8th meeting?
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins? Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen?
Aye.
The motion to table is moved. All right, Mr. Page, we've got a request for a final plat approval for Lot 7 of Phase 4 of Lee Summit's PUD, one lot, 1.67 acres, located on the east side of McInville Road, south of East Commerce Street, north of Monteith Avenue, in Section 17, Township 3 South, Range 7 West.
All right. Basically, this is the property that's immediately south of the Taco Bell. And my understanding is that the folks that are going to be buying it are going to construct basically an automated car wash there. And car wash. Yes, automated car wash. And it's simply a final plat approval, and this conforms to the plan unit development, preliminary development plan, for the development. So it's kind of pretty much meets or exceeds all of the requirements of the C4 Lee Summit PUD, as far as, width and size and all of those sorts of things. You have before you a motion to grant final plat approval, for this lot. Actually, probably, the remaining property that's unplatted at this point probably will generate a couple more at some point down the road, but Lee Summit is pretty much reaching the point of being built out. At any rate, you have a motion to approve. We need to revise the setbacks shown on the plat to a front yard of 35 feet, side yard 0 feet, and rear yard 20 feet. And those are the provisions in the PUD document. We need to show on the plat the location of all survey descriptions. We need to add a mortgagee certificate if relevant. We need to revise the owners and mortgagee certificates to use our current wording for dedication of right-of-ways and utilities. And we need to revise the plat to reflect the 10-foot wide utility easement on the front and rear property lines and 5-foot wide utility easements on the side property lines. And we need to revise in the notes on the face of the plat that there are 10-foot wide utility easements on the front and rear property lines. Then from item number 2 on is our standard subdivision conditions. And that's my report, unless anyone has any questions.
Questions or comments for Mr. Page?
It's a pretty straightforward deal.
If no questions or comments for Mr. Page, is the applicant here? And if so, if you please come forward, state your name and address.
I'm Matt Wolf with ETI Corporation. We're representing Leroy Ratliff, who's proposing this subdivision, and we're at 1755 Linfield Road, Suite 100 in Memphis, 38119.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Wolf? Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Is Is there anyone here for or against this application? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve. Request for final plat approval for Lot 7 of Phase 4 of Lee's Summit PUD. One lot, 1.67 acres, located on the east side of Mackinville Road, south of East Commerce Street and north of Monteith Avenue in Section 17, Township 3 South, Range 7 West. Property is currently zoned in the PUD Planned Unit Development District. Leroy Ratliff with Century Car Wash Express on behalf of Mark Anglin, property owner.
If you will, Commissioner Thorne, if you will include the following conditions.
Yes.
Number, please.
My bad. Subject to the following conditions, 1 through 10.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen?
Aye.
Motion to approve passes. All right, Mr. Page. Last item is request for a final plat approval for Compel Church Hernando Campus Subdivision, one lot, 31.83 acres, located on the west side of Mackinville Road, north of Dilworth Lane and south of Cedar Grove Parkway in Section 7, Township 3 South, Range 7 West.
All righty. This is, as the chairman mentioned, this is a one-lot subdivision. As I think I've mentioned in the past, under our ordinance, we cannot issue a building permit unless it's on an approved lot, and this lot has never been platted. So that's the whole purpose of this action, is to plat the lot, so that they can move forward and build their church. Yes, sir.
I don't know, I've got the wrong plat on this one. It's got the car wash plat on this.
Yeah, mine's that way too. It's got-
Well, crud, okay. Well, maybe it's, is that the same one that's on the other?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't just get them mixed up, did I?
No, it looks like.
It's
No, I
been
think you put the Lee
duplicated.
Summit on both of them, BJ.
All right, well, if you look at the location map, that's the property. Essentially, as far as, the size, being 30-plus acres, it's obviously bigger than, greater than, wider than, anything that would apply as far as development regulations go. As far as the subdivision plat itself, we need to revise the setbacks to reflect the correct setbacks. We need to add the mortgagee certificate if relevant, and we need to revise the owners and mortgagee certificates to use our current wording concerning the dedication of roads and utility easements. And then the remainder of the conditions are standard conditions, relative to, improvements and so forth. One thing that I would note, is that, as you can tell from the location map, this is an L-shaped piece of property, so it does have frontage on both Mackinville Road and Dilworth Lane. So it will involve improvements, to both of those roads.
And Mr. Page, just for general knowledge for the commission, I just asked Kristen, but on this plat, being this was never platted, why would this not be considered preliminary and final plat?
Something else I didn't tell you is the PUD acts as the preliminary.
Okay. It was just, it threw me off a little bit. So seeing it was never plotted.
Well, it's just a matter of the way we word the agenda. We certainly could, do a better job with that in the future. Essentially, because this is considered a minor lot subdivision, since it's only one lot, The preliminary and final are basically combined together as a single action. So, you know, certainly if y'all prefer that we say preliminary and final, be more than happy to make that adjustment.
I was just knowledge first, so anything that falls under minor, it's kind of combined. If it's major, it needs to be
Right, separate,
separate. Got you, okay. Just general knowledge for us.
sure.
Thank you.
And BJ, why would is this being carved out of is there some left? I mean, why do you even have to subdivide? I mean, why do you have to do a subdivision plat of a total piece of property?
Because
I don't get that.
Because our ordinance, well, let me talk about it in two parts. First, our ordinance requires that in order to issue a building permit, it has to be on an approved lot, which means it has to be approved by the planning commission and the board, you know, before we can issue a building permit, okay? So, you know, that's half of the answer. The other half is, you know, and essentially, you know, cities have taken that position to guarantee that they get their right-of-way off the roads,
Right, gotcha.
basically. You know,
So it is being.
now, I will say this, let me just point out one other thing. You know, the county does have an exemption in their ordinance that they don't require the platting of properties that I think are 10 acres or more in size. We don't have that in ours, okay? So basically, you know, anything that isn't platted ultimately will have to be platted
Gotcha.
because of the building permit, you know, question.
So this is both the preliminary and the final plan?
Yes.
So we'll have a follow-on subdivision, final subdivision?
Well, this is preliminary and final because it's a minor, so it won't really come back to the commission, you know, unless there's some further, you know, development of the property. You know, right now, in my understanding from meeting with their representatives, is it's gonna be like, you know, so many of our churches these days, it's gonna be a great big huge church out there on that 30 acres, and they're gonna have some, you know, like a ball field and some other athletic fields and, you know, some other things, you know, accessory uses, you might say, on the property with the church. But it's essentially gonna be, you know, one big church.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Page? Just for record, as the applicant here,
I don't see them.
no one here, just for record. And I'm assuming no one here for or against this application, so do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to grant final plat approval for Compel Church, Hernando Campus Subdivision, 31.83 acres, located on the west side of Mackinville Road, north of Dilworth Lane, and south of Cedar Grove Parkway in Section 7, Township 3 South, Range 7 West, based upon a finding that the submitted final plat generally conforms to the requirements of the city's codes and ordinances, subject to conditions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Commissioner Thorne.
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan.
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth.
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen.
Aye.
The motion passes to approve.
I do have one question that kind of came to mind. I mean, it has no bearing really on the approval of it, but, I mean, that's a single, I saw that there was a cluster mailbox qualification in there. I mean, this is one unit. I mean, are they supposed to have a cluster mailbox out to the side? I can't recall what was in the ordinance.
Probably not.
Okay.
I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, again, this may be my own failing, but, you know, I tend to put, you know, if it's a standard condition, I just put it on there. You know, and if it doesn't apply, then it just doesn't apply.
Well, I guess it's also a USPS question as well, because are they gonna make them have a standalone cluster mailbox? But you wouldn't think so.
I wouldn't think so.
But,
It's kind of like the car wash we were just talking about, you know? You know, if there's no cluster mailbox, you know, for the Walmart Center per se, then are they not gonna be able to have their own, you know, mail delivery? You know, clearly, you know, things, in my mind, are kind of uneven on the whole deal. But, you know, that and a couple of bucks might buy a cup of coffee somewhere.
I guess we'll find out if they request a variance on the
Yeah.
cluster mailboxes.
You know. But like I said, you know, if it doesn't apply, it doesn't apply. You know, we put conditions on there, you know, about improving half the right-of-way of a road, for example. Well, if the road's already been approved, you know, already been improved, you know, with curb gutter and sidewalks, clearly that's not going to apply, you know. But I would rather have it in there than not in there, you know. In my mind, it kind of reduces the potential for errors to creep in.
Mr. Page, is there any other business tonight?
No, I would just like to note that, you know, we had hoped to make progress on the comprehensive plan, and we are still intending to try and pursue the approach that was discussed, you know, setting up some smaller committee-type groups, and meet, you know, perhaps during the day or whenever is best for the various groups to meet, to kind of tackle the comprehensive plan, you know, and then ultimately come back with, you know, the whole group together, you know, to share notes, basically. You know, it's just been very difficult, you know, between the holidays, you know, then Beth Garcia downstairs, our front desk clerk, got the COVID, you know, and then Kendra got some kind of respiratory illness, although it hasn't, as far as we know, been identified as COVID yet. You know, and so they're gone, they're at home, you know, being quarantined, you know, and it's just really
For a week and a half.
just kind of,
Back where you were, what, a few months ago?
well, it's just really, you know, kind of upset our whole, trying to get some kind of routine going, and, you know, it just kind of took it all.
I have really bad luck
Washed
with
it down the
this.
drain, man, so, you know. Anyway, that, I just wanted to bring everybody up to date on that point. But we are gonna try and pursue that, if we can just get everybody back.
We haven't hired anybody yet.
I knew we got the.
That's all.
That guy's
All
sick
right.
too.
No other business? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Who seconded that?
Yeah, you didn't get a second.
We got an all and aye. We can't do a majority on the closure of the committee?
Unanimous.
Everybody seconded.
I'll second.